Hey guys, this is Jared Spencer from the Terror Academy. I chose the topic of world hunger, the causes, the effects, and the simple solutions that help lessen those effects. My title is Feeding the 50. I'll go ahead and start it. When we think about threats to the environment, we tend to picture cars and smokestacks, not dinner. But the truth is, our need for food poses one of the biggest dangers to the planet. Today, hunger wears the face of malnourished men, women, and children who don't possess the ability to gain the essential nutrients that a human body needs to function properly. A variety of causes spring to mind when I think of world hunger, such as the unconcerned citizen, food waste in the agriculture industry, and the selfish hearts of the rich. This topic is so dear to me because when I was 2 years old, my dad was laid off from his job, and we had to survive off a low amount of food. And the welfare program, it helped us to get through that rough time. And mainly I tell you this because my parents still remember, the principle that they still remember, I should say, is that our household at that time had relatively no food waste during that time. And that just goes to prove that people can live off of a low amount of food and still accomplish their daily tasks. The three main causes that I mentioned, which are the unconcerned citizen, the food waste and agriculture industry, and the selfish hearts of the rich, are the three main roots of the effects of world hunger. So I like to take a deeper look into each of those three and explain them. Starting off with the unconcerned citizen. I've noticed a growing trend in society that our eyes are bigger than our stomachs, meaning we tend to serve ourselves a heaping plate of our favorite meal. We eat half of it, and then the other half is just, it grows cold because it takes us too long to eat it, or we're too full, so we just decide it ends up in the garbage can, basically. And I know I'm not the only one who does this, because according to www.usda.gov, approximately 31% of our nation's food supply was transported to landfills rather than feeding individuals in life-threatening situations. And I know it's sometimes hard to think of people in less positive situations than you in certain times of your life where we live in this positive place and we live in this first world country where the effects of world hunger aren't as noticeable on the outside. But there's a statistic from www.world.hunger.org states that 48.1 million Americans lived in food insecure households, including 32.8 million adults and 15.3 million children. This goes to show that although we may not think that the problem extends to first world countries, that a hypothetical situation that may be applicable to this is that someone in the same town as you that may live in a different neighborhood could be suffering from the effects of hunger, yet you wouldn't know it because they don't show that at school, or they don't publicly display that they are suffering from those effects. And this statistic goes to show that it's around us, it's all around us. Millions of people are suffering from it, even in America. And the next effect that I would like to look at is food waste in the agriculture industry. And let's see. So food waste in the agriculture industry takes a little bit more definition to understand it on such a large scale. So the food and agriculture industry defines exactly what food waste is. It says that food loss and food waste refers to the decrease of food in subsequent stages of the food supply chain intended for human consumption. And also, this is kind of what I wanted to mention earlier, is that with that statistic of how 31% of all our nation's food ends up in landfills. This shows a ton of fruit and a ton of vegetables that ended up in a landfill that could have been consumed by humans. And going on with this is that they describe later on with an example, the truckload of bananas. The bananas fall off and they become food waste because they're not stated as like essentially good enough for human consumption. So they end up in landfills, like the picture showed, rather than being eaten by humans. Another surprising statistic is that 1/3 of all the food produced in the world actually, is wasted and spoiled, and basically it doesn't end up in human consumption rather than feeding people in those life-threatening situations, which I have this really good picture that demonstrates this. And although this is applying it to the UK, and it says that up to 1/3 of the food in the UK is spoiled before being consumed by humans, I find it really interesting because it shows this pair is crying, and that's just beyond words describing what I'm trying to get at. And so moving on with that, I'd like to move on to my last point, which is certainly, it's not the least, is the selfish hearts of the rich. And so starting off that, Brookings.edu has a statistic and says that the world produces about 2.5 billion tons of cereal at present. And they later on in the article they go on to describe the implications of that statistic. And it says, if we consider a grain-based diet with an already moderate consumption of protein, current world cereal production could feed more than 10 billion if distributed well. And that's just basically saying, with a little help of milk, the cereal production rate right now could feed our world population and more. Not to mention all the fruits and vegetables that are out there and basically every other nutritional product out there. And our growing population, maybe at 9 billion at 2050, but we can feed 10 billion as of right now. In conclusion, I like to say that we can make an impact on food not ending up in landfills, not being wasted in the agriculture industry, and also the ways that we can do this is by using those 3 R's in our life, by reducing, reusing, and recycling. We can reuse by making compost and using in our family gardens to reduce the transportation, the food waste, and we can also eat leftovers and make an impact that way. I know that small actions and when everyone does them makes a huge impact. So make the change in your life to reduce hunger and to make an impact on other people's lives. Thank you.